Hello, Blazer fans, Blazers Edge readers. Welcome to another edition of the Blazers Edge Videocast. I am Sam Tung, along with editor of Blazers Edge, Dave Deckard. Have another question for you, actually somewhat related to another videocast we did looking at the future of the team. And this email comes from Daniel. If you'd like to be like Daniel and send in an email, please do so. blazersub@gmail.com, the place that you can do that. And Daniel writes in, do you ever see the Blazers having a starting backcourt of Lillard and C.J. McCollum? And if not, can you see the Blazers justify paying a projected starter quality player in McCollum as much as the market will command without the ability for him to step into a starting role in case of injury? I love that O'Shea is drafting the best player available, but as I see it, the Blazers should look to trade McCollum when his value is at its highest, which I don't believe is right now. Your thoughts? Again, thanks to Daniel for his email. And Dave, wanted your thoughts on the idea of a future C.J. McCollum and Damian Lillard starting backcourt.
Well, this is what they call, I believe, a first world problem, right? I always hate that expression because, I mean, I live in the first world. What kind of problems do you expect me to have? And the Blazers, you know, if they have that problem, that will be one of those. Having too many good players is a joy, not an issue. You don't have to worry about McCollum getting paid for another 4 years. Basically, paying Lillard is going to be the more immediate concern, but again, that's a couple years down the road. If they both blossom into that kind of talent, the Blazers will either have a real nice starting backcourt or a real nice trading chip, and either one is okay. The greater issue here, I think, is if you do pair them in the backcourt, what do you have to do to the rest of the team? We already see with the current team that some of the players you rely on have defined weaknesses. Nothing wrong with that. Most NBA players do, but it's pretty egregious in some cases. Damian Lillard's defense is not exactly a sight to marvel at. Robin Lopez's mobility is about the same. In some ways, the two compensate for each other. But you know, if you keep, for instance, Lopez on the team, then you're going to have certain things out of your other four players. Same with Lillard. If you have Lillard as your starting point guard playing 38 minutes a game, you've got to have pretty strong defenders around him. Add McCollum to that mix as a shooting guard, and you have to have even more defense in the front court. You put a correspondingly bigger burden on them. Whether the Blazers are going to be able to meet that and still have enough talent in that front court in order to prosper, I think would be an open question.
Something that just popped into my mind, Dave, and you know, I've been thinking about this question for a while now, and we've chatted about this. If McCollum and Lillard are the starting backcourt, why can't McCollum be the point guard and Damian Lillard be the shooting guard? And I'm not saying that I believe that that should be the case. I'm just tossing that out there because we know that McCollum can be a fairly effective ball-dominant guy, and Lillard has become much more of an off-ball player, especially when he's playing with the second unit. So, I mean, would that help at all? Obviously, that's not going to help defensively, but could that maybe make it a more cohesive unit in the backcourt?
Sure. I mean, McCollum would have to learn a little bit more point guardiness, but again, Lillard is in the backcourt with him, so he has someone to take the pressure off. I mean, basically, if those two play, I think you say the old line about, well, we don't count positions, we just count players. And they're both guards, they can both handle the ball, both of them can pass a little bit, and we're good with that. And, you know, that could work. But again, you have to ask who's playing around them then, who's going to make a difference. A little bit of history lesson may bring some hope. Terry Porter and Clyde Drexler, when they first teamed together, were actually not a good defensive backcourt. They had serious weaknesses there, and they didn't really have the motivation. What really helped that team blossom was, of course, the acquisition of Buck Williams, because then you had Buck and you had Jerome Kersey in the front court. Kevin Duckworth wasn't a great defender, but at least he could eat space. And the three of them kind of allowed the defense that Porter and Drexler played to tell more. The Blazers would have to concoct some sort of recipe like that. Nicola Batum might fit into that. Whether LaMarcus Aldridge does would be, I think, an open question. Robin Lopez could certainly manage there, but he probably needs some help as well. So if you get to the point where you are playing Lillard and McCollum, you have to look at, I think, some changes in the front court lineup. Whether the Blazers are willing to go there, I think, is more of the operative and critical question, rather than whether they're just willing to pair Lillard and McCollum.
And I think the other part of this too, Dave, is the fact that, and you've written about it a lot, that McCollum was drafted to be, for all intents and purposes, a sixth man on this team. And they brought in Mo Williams, and he's filled in that role, especially when McCollum was out for injury or with an injury at the beginning of the year. And you sort of draft these guys to fit, or you try to figure out where they fit on the roster, and it seemed like that was the role he was going to play. And that's what's intriguing to me, is if you get to the point where you have to play both of those guys in the backcourt together, I'm not sure if the team necessarily anticipated that that was going to be the case. And obviously McCollum was a top 10 draft pick, and you would think that a guy of that caliber could be a starter in the NBA. But if you have duplicate skill sets between Lillard and McCollum, you would have to think that might be the best fit for him. And if they do have to play both in the backcourt, both guys are going to have to change, not necessarily dramatically, but probably quite a bit in order to, accommodate for a change like that.
Well, it's likely what the Blazers were thinking was a little bit of Detroit Bad Boys action, right? Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, and then Vinny Microwave Johnson coming off the bench. Well, that's not a horribly far stretch from Damian Lillard, Wesley Matthews, and then C.J. McCollum coming off the bench. Obviously, those players aren't exactly equal, but that's kind of the pattern. But again, look at those Detroit Bad Boys. Who'd they have in the front court? They had guys like Dennis Rodman. They had Bill Laimbeer. They had Rick Mahorn. They had John Sally. They had guys who took no prisoners that absolutely meant business up there. And whether or not they were all-star caliber players in terms of scoring, they were certainly going to take care of business on the other end and make that guard core tell and make that guard core be able to show forth. The Blazers do not have that in the front court in any way, shape, or form right now. Robin Lopez is one of those guys. Everybody else is probably not even close. So again, if that's your pattern, what exactly are you going to do to make that play out, and what kind of moves are you going to have to make? The Blazers aren't there yet, and it seems like the experiment they're doing now is going well enough, but whether that lasts 2-3 years into the future, well, I'm not sure. That remains to be seen.
And the team, the more new school team, Dave, that you have to compare him to is the one that Terry Stotts coached before, which was in Dallas, the one that won the championship. And you had, guys like Jason Terry coming off the bench that were scorers, but then you also had Tyson Chandler that was a defensive, an elite defensive player that was able to anchor that big unit. So, it's going to take, as you said, probably some altering of pieces in order to mirror that.
Well, and the other problem with that comparison is you had Jason Kidd as a guard who was maybe the best defensive guard in the modern NBA. You had Jason Terry with umpteen years of experience under his belt. I mean, you might be able to get that team, but at a minimum, you're going to have to wait 8 years for these guards to get that kind of experience. And still, I don't see where you make up the Jason Kidd part, because he was a singular talent. And I know he was on the tail end of his career by that point, but if you look at what he did in that playoff run, it was pretty darn significant, and they would not have won that title without him. So you can make the Dirk Nowitzki, LaMarcus Aldridge comparison all you want. You can even stretch Chandler and Lopez to kind of fit together, but you've got a lot of veteran power on that Dallas team that the Blazers are just absolutely on the other end of the spectrum from. So, we'll have to see if they're trying to do that. Like I said, they just may have to wait longer than we are comfortable doing, and maybe longer than they can afford to keep these players.
Want to thank Daniel for his question. If you'd like to send in a question, be like Daniel. Send those in. blazersub@gmail.com is the place that you can do those for both the videocast and the mailbags that Dave does every week. So again, blazersub@gmail.com, the place to send those emails. And that's going to do it from us today. For Dave Deckard, I'm Sam Tung. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Blazers Edge Videocast. Keep checking out everything here on blazersedge.com. We'll talk to you all soon.